Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staying, an important video podcast series here inside the Louisiana Conference. I am your host, Todd Rossnagel. It is great to have you along with us as we continue to have these important conversations for this important time, and conversations centered on the value of staying with the United Methodist Church. For today's episode, we have another remote interview. We will be joined by Commander Reverend Quinn O'Bannon, who is going to be joining us from Arlington, Virginia. He is a chaplain in the United States Navy and also an elder in full connection here inside the Louisiana Conference. Years ago, he had a connection to the LSU Wesley Foundation, University United Methodist Church here in Baton Rouge, and Broadmoor United Methodist Church in both Shreveport and in Baton Rouge. And he is now a chaplain and will be joining us from Arlington, Virginia for this particular episode. Now, before we roll the interview, I do want to remind each and every one of you that all of our full episodes are available on our website at la-umc.org/staying. You can go back and look at the very first interview that we've had and all the way up until this particular episode. So we encourage you to go back and watch those videos and listen to them on a podcast if that's your desire as well. And we also want to remind you that you too can record your own staying video. Yeah, you might not be able to get into the studio here to do it, but we've heard from so many of you that want to record their own episodes. We want you to record your own story, and we have found a way to do that. Again, it's on our website, la-umc.org/staying. And now, without further ado, our interview with Commander Reverend Quinn O'Bannon. Quinn, thank you so much for carving time out of your very busy schedule to join us from Arlington, Virginia. Welcome to the Staying Video Podcast Series.
It's good to be here.
Well, we wanted to get your perspective, your perspective really from afar, from there in Virginia, as you've been monitoring the events inside the United Methodist Church, and specifically back here in the Louisiana Conference, which is your conference, your home. And so we would like to get your perspective from afar. But we also wanted to get your perspective because we know that as a chaplain, that you counsel and meet with people from a variety of different perspectives, both Christian and even non-Christian. And I guess my first question to you, Quinn, is how are you able to do that and meet with so many people and so many perspectives? I understand that having that middle lane has to be very, very important for you.
So I am currently Navy chaplain, but I serve the United States Marine Corps. So Navy chaplains provide chaplaincy to the Marine Corps, the Navy, and the Coast Guard. And my current setting is in the Marine Corps. And in 12 assignments, 19 years of doing this, I've served most of my time with U.S. Marines. And so the Marine Corps is a unique place. And I need to start by saying that I'm not expressing the opinions of the Marine Corps or the Navy, only my own as a Methodist minister. But the Marine Corps is the youngest average age of all of the branches of service. And I very much see my role and my job as that of a missionary, someone sent forth from the Louisiana Conference, but also on behalf of the United Methodist Church to be in ministry to the people who work in the Marine Corps, whether they be sailors or Marines. And it's a unique and interesting setting. I am surrounded by about 279 other clergy members from 100 different faith groups. And we take care of roughly 182,000 United States Marines across the United States and the globe. And those Marines come from just a very wide variety and a mix of Christian backgrounds, of non-Christian backgrounds. Some are Jewish, some are Muslim. on occasion, you'll have a Jedi Knight come to see you. But for the most part, they're people who identify from some sort of the Christian faith. And what is useful or helpful or important to me as a Methodist is occupying the middle ground, what we would call big tent, being in the middle and being a place of safety, a place where anybody can come talk to me and have a conversation in which they're not condemned, in which they feel safe, in which they feel open to express themselves, knowing that I'm going to keep their confidence, that I'm going to be absolute in that, and that I'm going to do my best to listen to them, to care for them, and to hear what they do. And so that's kind of a brief summary, I guess, of what I do in this role.
Quinn, it's great to be with you, and it's good to see you, even if it's just by video, and do appreciate the important work that you are doing, and certainly celebrate your ongoing connection with the Louisiana Conference here, kind of as an extension, using that phrase, the extension ministry, and we celebrate that along with you. One of the things, Quinn, that we often talk about in this staying series is the value of the connection. And how, connectionalism at its core really binds us together both here locally and even more broadly and similar to your role there. Could you talk a little bit about what it means to be a United Methodist in your role as a Navy chaplain, and how that general church endorsement of you really strengthens that sense of connection that is just sort of baked into our identity as United Methodists?
Absolutely. So about 18, 19 years ago now, I wanted to join the Navy Reserve to be a chaplain, and I only really ever expected to be a reservist, do a few years, and then come back or get out of the Navy. And with the wars that happened in Afghanistan and Iraq, that changed just the future for me, and eventually I would become a part of the active duty force of the Navy. And for people who are elders in full connection within an annual conference, mine again is the Louisiana Annual Conference. We ask the Global Board of Higher Education and Ministry to endorse us for ministry. What does that mean? That means that after we've been ordained by our annual conference, the global church interviews us and endorses us to be representatives of the denomination in institutional settings. Mine happens to be the Department of Defense, Department of the Navy. And so I have what's called an ecclesiastical endorsement from the Methodist Church to be its representative in uniform. And I'm surrounded by, there's about 380 or so United Methodist clergy persons who are endorsed and assigned to active duty ministry within the Navy, the Air Force, or the Army. And we maintain that connectionalism not only with each other, those that we serve with, clergy colleagues in uniform, and with the annual conference that we come from, but also within the area that we're serving. Right now I'm in Arlington, Virginia, so I'm in the Virginia Annual Conference. I don't have any official relationship to the Virginia Annual Conference, but I attend one of their churches. Sometimes I go to their meetings. I build clergy colleague friendships with those folks. And so there is a very unique sense of connectionalism in that sense. Right now I'm assigned to the Pentagon. And so there are Methodists who work for the Air Force, and there are Methodists who work for the Army, and there are Methodists who work for the Space Force and the Navy and the Marine Corps, all in that building. Not many of us, but there are 5 or 6 of us. And we know each other, and we remain, or we have a connection to each other in that sense, in sharing. If you go a little bit beyond that, I would identify with the Episcopal Church and with some of the other Methodist churches, Wesleyans and such that we are involved with. We gather together to have friendship and celebrate Methodism and where we come from.
Quinn, we've been using terms that are of the political nature. I know you've been watching some of the Staying series, and so, and again, for our audience, I continue to apologize for using terms like, conservative, liberal, left, center, right, center. But in your situation, I'd like to maybe get a story from you, if I can, for our audience at home, of how you've been able to kind of navigate, the conservative backgrounds and liberal backgrounds, and your desire really to hold the center, to hold the middle. What are, if you can, share with us maybe a story or two from a moment when being in the middle was something that provided a tremendous amount of value?
Let me start by telling you what we do, what we're expected to do as Navy chaplain.
Yeah.
So we have four what they call core competencies that the Secretary of the Navy has asked us to provide. One is provision, and that is defined as the worship and sacramental rights of our own church to our own people. So a United Methodist clergy person providing for United Methodist clergy, or excuse me, United Methodist lay people, potentially other clergy as well. The second thing is that we care for everybody. So regardless of who comes to me for care, and that care might include counseling, it might include what is in essence confession, but a safe place for them to talk and to know that their secrets will be held. The third thing is facilitation, and that is if I have a Jewish sailor who comes to me and needs Jewish provision, obviously I can't do that as a United Methodist, but it's expected of me to find a rabbi who can take care of that person. And the fourth thing is really a military-specific thing, and that's advisement, where I would go and advocate for a person or a particular problem that's going on with the commanding officer, someone who's in a position that maybe they can fix that logjam in the system, if you will, that someone's having. So facilitation is an interesting, facilitation and combined with care are two things that I think speak directly to this. Often people know I'm United Methodist. They know I occupy the middle ground, and so they see me as a safe place from who they can talk to. It might be a Roman Catholic who knows the answer they're going to get if they go see their priest, or if they're Islamic, they know the answer they're going to get if they see their imam, and they need a place to come and just to talk through the ideas that they're having, the issues that they're facing, and so they might see a Methodist or someone who's in that middle ground to have that conversation. I recall a time where a young Marine came to see me who was dealing with some pretty pretty frightening for him in the moment, issues with gender and his gender identity, and how that might manifest itself and how he might pursue the way he felt called to be. And so he saw me as a safe place among the chaplains who were assigned at that installation to come and to have those chats. And in retrospect, I was glad he chose me, because I would be the one who was, I think, best positioned to just listen, to just hear what he had to say, and without any condemnation, without really even as much as an opinion about things, listen to him, care for him, and just provide God's love for him. Another thing that comes to mind was a senior chief petty officer. That's about as high as you can get. There's one rank higher that in enlisted troops, and he was not a Christian, not a person of faith, and had an issue and went to the doctor, and they found cancer. Not only that, they gave him a 6-week diagnosis that he probably wouldn't be around after 6 weeks. And we began, he's still alive. So this has been about 12 years later. He is, wow. He's still with us. He is strong. He's got other health issues going on because of his age at this point. But during that 6-week period and the months that would follow, we had some of the deepest conversations I've had in ministry in the Navy about life and death, and what does the afterlife look like, and what does God's love for us mean. I don't know, to be honest, where he is in that at this point, but I do know that we shared that he embraced what was going to happen to him, although it didn't end up happening. And so those are those very powerful moments where we, who are put in the institution as representatives of the church, the door is open for us to be very present and to be God's presence in their lives when they're going through some very, very difficult and challenging things. And those that have not grown up in the church, those that don't have a faith experience, they don't know how to deal with that. They don't know how to have these conversations. And so I find it helpful to be a Methodist in the moment, standing in the middle to hear what they have to say.
You know, Van, as I hear those answers from Quinn, it reminds me of one thing that we've been talking about during the Staying video series is just the historical nature of the United Methodist Church being a church that holds the middle. I mean, and so many times I think people, perhaps there are times when we were maybe confused that when you see the United Methodist Church swing to the conservative side or swing to the left, But the reality is, historically speaking, it's been a denomination that holds the middle.
Yeah. Well, oftentimes, Quinn, I was thinking about you and the stories that you told, and the examples of how your United Methodist identity and that sense of undergirding and formation really puts you in a position to be available to a varied range of people in varied situations of crisis or circumstance. Mm-hmm. I was thinking back to in the early formative days of the United Methodist Church, when the language of theological pluralism was first sort of introduced into the vocabulary of what it meant to be United Methodist, and how that commitment to navigating being a follower of Jesus Christ in a pluralistic society and world, and how so often in the conversation today that commitment is disparaged. And yet it's that very commitment, Quinn, that I just heard you referring to, right, that has placed you in a position to bear witness to not only your faith in Jesus Christ and how that forms and shapes you as a Christian, but your identity as a United Methodist in being a part of a denominational body that celebrates the willingness to engage people where they are. I just think that's such a beautiful affirmation. And, I think that, thank you for sharing that, because we look for examples oftentimes in a local church setting, but you embody that on a daily basis in your life and work. And I think that's something to be celebrated.
Quinn, as I'm reflecting on your specific context, I can't help but also realize, as I'm thinking about this, that we are sadly using terms like battle. We're using terms like us versus them. As much as we are trying not to, it is happening, right? We are in the midst of it right now. And so we are using terms that one would classify as battle terms. And you sit with people that frequently use battle terms, but at a very different context. When you hear United Methodists, even back home in your conference here in Louisiana, use terms like battle terms, what runs through your mind, Quinn?
That's an interesting one. I think so. I'm a veteran of the war in Afghanistan. I'm a veteran of the war in Iraq. Although I was on the border, I wasn't actually in the country of Iraq. I was taking care of the remains of those service members who were killed in the Iraq War as they came back home. And so for me, having been shot at, having had bombs go off around me, when people use terms of warfare, terms of battle, and use those to describe the evolution, if you will, of the Methodist Church and how it's moving down the road at this point, it makes me bristle. It makes me wonder, why have we gotten to this point, I think, in this conversation? I am surrounded by, roughly 100 clergy from about 100 different faith groups. Almost all of those are Christian faith groups. They come from very different and diverse perspectives, from every flavor of Baptist imaginable to Episcopalian and Anglican and Presbyterian and Seventh-day Adventist and Christian Science and Mormons and just every sort of thing that you might imagine that come together. And somehow we who don't agree with each other theologically, we who don't dot every I and cross every T in the same way, we somehow put that aside and work together for the good of the people who need to have the love of God in their life. And so when I hear people in my own denomination, in my own annual conference, or here in the Virginia annual conference, begin to draw lines in the sand, begin to use warfare language, it's just not something that connects with me. It's not reality for me, having been in a place where real warfare happens. Having been in the part of the worst part of Afghanistan, the enemy, the people who we should fear, they don't look like United Methodist. They don't look like the people that we've sat by on a pew with, or preached sermons to, or baptized their family members, or married their family members, or buried their family members. That's not what they look like. Just these minor differences in theological understanding, in the way to interpret Scripture, and the way that we experience and share and feel the love of God in our lives, is so foreign and distant to me from the language of warfare and what that looks like. I don't even know what to make of it. It astounds me. I know that when I've been in combat situations and people came to see me in the midst of that, who very much wanted to not be there anymore. Believe it or not, people don't like bombs going off around them. People don't like to be shot at. They don't like to see their friends injured, and they want to go home. That's not, leaving has never been a part of my vocabulary, right? We have to stay, and we have to be a part of a team, because if the cohesion of the team falls apart, then the mission falls apart. That's the way I see things, and I think that applies to the church as well. That when we, Van, that's sitting beside you, was in my ordination class, or at least we were walking that journey together. I'm sure that Van and I don't agree on every little thing about theology, and yet we've been able to do 23 years of ministry together.
Yes,
walking hand in hand, even in the midst of differences, but taking care of people and looking beyond those differences, because God looks past the differences in each of us, and the failures, and the times that we get angry, and the times that we drop the ball, and the times that we think we're better than other people, or that our ideas are more important, or that we have it more right. However you want to say that, however you want to put that, God looks past that in each of us, because God uses each of us to do God's work in this place. And so it pains me, it hurts me. I wish we would find a way to hold together, even in the midst of this, to do God's work in this place.
Well, there will be those of us who will be staying. And so there will be those of us who stayed. And so we're in some ways pointing to that future. And so we look forward to that future. Quinn, I did want to ask you, and I didn't ask you this or set you up for this in our pre-interview, but I do want to ask you this, because I do know that you share a love of baseball like I do. And I know that when you are back in town for annual conference, you are also sort of kind of back in town for LSU baseball. And I think it's important to kind of play that metaphor out, and Van probably gets sick of my baseball metaphors over time. But I think it's important to play out the metaphor that, you can't have a team with a bunch of sluggers. You've got to have a couple people on the team that can hit a couple singles, and you've got to have fast people and sluggers as well. What is your message to those of us trying to hold things together and staying, that it does take people from all walks of life to do this thing called ministry?
So the gifts of God are given to each according to their need and to the need of the people, right? And so we each have a role to play. We each have a different place, whether it's in administration or in communications, or whether it's in Navy chaplaincy, with young Marines who try everything they can try to mess things up in their lives. No matter where we find ourselves in that, it takes us all, and it takes the people who don't want to be here anymore as well. And so as we lose them, we lose some of that middle of the road flavor, that uniqueness that we share. And so it takes us all to be that team, whether it's a LSU baseball team or the United Methodist team. Good analogy.
Yeah. Dan, any final words for Quinn?
Well, traditional, progressive, centrist, the labels that we throw around really are representative words for the diversity of belief and practice that we hold together in the United Methodist Church and in the Wesleyan tradition. And in that sense, the baseball analogy can play out pretty well. You know, the team is made up of different players with different roles. We're a diverse, big tent denomination that at our best makes room and space for people to follow Jesus and to understand who God is in their life and in their work. And we enable important ministry like you do, Quinn, to take place because of the value of the connection and the beauty that it holds.
Quinn, it goes without saying, thank you for obviously for recording this today, but thank you for your service to our country, and thank you for your dedication to the Louisiana Conference, even though it is from afar. We love seeing you every summer at annual conference, and thanks again for all you do in the name of Christ.
Well, thank you for giving me this platform to talk and to share a little bit about what I do and how I see the unique nature that United Methodists play in the global community, especially in our governmental community, armed services. And thank you for keeping the connection alive.
Well, we are trying our very best. And Quinn, thanks again for joining us. And for all of you at home, we thank you for joining us as well. Don't forget, if you have a question for our future episodes, or if you just want to voice your opinion, you can do so on the Facebook feed and also on the YouTube feed. And you can also email us a question. It is communications@la-umc.org. And if you'd like to go back and look at some of the previous episodes of the entire Staying series, you can do so. It's found on our website at la-umc.org/staying. For Quinn, for Van, for William Willoughby behind the scenes, I'm your host, Todd Rossnagel. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great day, everyone.